Yo, what's up, Facebook family? Hope that you are having a good Friday night. Coming in here late for tonight's edition of Man Up Friday with Mike, your mentor. Just got off a group training call, so wanted to get this in just so I didn't miss a day. Um, yeah, so we're going to get right into it. And this week, we are talking about the importance of the relationship between a father and son and give you some ideas on what that should look like. Okay? So, extremely important, right? Because, for one, if you're a believer, the relationship between your earthly father is supposed to model the relationship or set the model for your relationship with the Heavenly Father, but we know that that doesn't always work or go according to what God initially had in mind because of the way that we are. But we're not going to go down the theological road. Um, yeah, so before we jump into this, I just want to give props to where I learned all this, or a lot of this, and that was here, The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Dr. Robert M. Lewis. To keep a long story short, because it's late, we were living in Chicago, and I basically didn't know if I wanted to be married, didn't know really who I was, really struggling. Had just come out of telling my wife the truth about something that I had lied to her about for a very long time, which pretty much threatened to destroy our whole marriage. So I was um, I was past ground zero. I was negative. What up, Terry? And had a long ways to go to earn back her trust and to build myself back up as a person. I got involved through a coincidence with this men's group at the church at that time that someone recommended me to, and there was I think 6 guys who didn't know anything about each other, and we got together to go through this workbook. And really, the questions that this workbook asked really allowed me to look back at my life and connect a lot of major dots. And then once those dots were connected, think strategically about how I wanted my life to look moving forward as a husband, as a father, as a friend, a leader in the community, all that stuff that we don't talk about enough today as men. And it's my opinion that this is why the world is the way that it is. Because the honor that manhood used to carry uh, has been abused, trampled on, misused, whatever negative adjective you want to attach to it. And I'm going to do my part to bring honor back to that, to real masculinity. And that's how I try to live my life as a reflection of that, and just to share these things because you don't know what you don't know. When this stuff isn't taught in school, um, I didn't hear a lot of this stuff, uh, you know, growing up from the other men around me. So yeah, I think it's needed, and the reaction has been great. So I'm going to continue to share it. So let's jump in to the content and talk about this because it's extremely important. What father doesn't want to have a good relationship with their son, and what son doesn't want to have a good relationship with their dad, and vice versa. Sorry, late, losing my train of thought here. Okay, share my screen and voila. All right, fathers and sons, part one. Gotta move this thing out of the way. And this was a picture of me and my son sitting in a go-kart, Craig's Cruisers, about ready to go here. And you know, it's interesting getting married and stepping into an immediate role of being a father, right? There's no working up to it, I guess, like with my daughter in the baby stage and kind of trying to find your bearings and all that. It's like baptism by fire. Here you go. you're now responsible for this 7-year-old who coincidentally doesn't really know his father either. You didn't know or have a good relationship with your father. How do you bridge that gap? How do you stop what is now becoming a family legacy of fatherlessness? How do you fix that? And this is something I was extremely passionate about, and it's crazy what a coincidence that is, and how God really brought all this together for me to share life with my son. So if you're not following for some reason, it's my stepson. So he's not mine by blood, but that doesn't matter one difference to me. I never refer to him as my stepson. He's always been my son because that's what he is, and he always will be, regardless. Yeah, so it's been quite the adventure. This dude was so mad when he met me the first time. Him and my wife got off a train from Chicago to come visit, and he just sat there the whole time, the ride to my house, with his arms crossed and this dirty little look on his face. And we get to the house, and I had a cat at the time. Willie, I think, was the cat's name. And I had this laser pen, and I knew he would love it because this cat was crazy. Like, this cat would literally climb this 9-foot ceiling, or this 9-foot wall, to get to this laser pen. So I took it out, and I was like, "Hey, check this out." And he's still giving me the dirty look, and I'm pointing the laser pen at the wall, and here this cat comes flying from the other room and just jumps up on the wall, and then tries to climb up and get it. And he just fell on his back laughing and laughing and couldn't stop. And then he wanted the laser pen to do it for himself, and that just kind of broke the ice, and started that relationship uh, between us. And it's never stopped, thank God. And I guess my parenting style is, I try to take what I felt was really effective with me growing up and the way that I was treated, and then mix that in with what I thought wasn't effective, in what I think would work better. That's not always the case, but I think it's worked pretty good. My son's pretty laid back. Um, Part of the reason that this video is late tonight is I wanted to get it out earlier, but my son actually ended up getting a little bit of an accident with his car. So he called me, and I had to help him deal with that and stuff. And it was really an opportunity for me to just to teach him, right? And I remember when I was that age and I got into an accident with a vehicle, and uh, God bless my grandpa. He definitely wanted to teach me a lesson, and for me to understand the magnitude of the responsibility of driving this 5,000-pound basically weapon down the road, and understand that. But he wasn't as tactful as I guess I was today. I definitely didn't forget the message that he had for me, but didn't agree with the method. So today, just talked to my son. It was clear he was nervous, and just try to treat him like a man. He's 18 years old, so talk to him about being responsible and being careful when you're driving, and knowing the conditions, and all that type of stuff. You really didn't need a lecture. That wasn't gonna do it. But just continue to build that relationship, of trust. Yeah. So let's get into it tonight. So first thing, the power of dad. Uh, it can't be overstated. I don't know if this is true or not. I think I tried to look it up before, so it might be like, mm, uh, this might be exaggerated, but I swear there was this experiment, or there's this story about at a prison, uh, them sending out cards for Father's Day and offering, like Hallmark or something, offering to provide free cards to the inmates for Father's Day and for Mother's Day. And on Father's Day, there was very few cards that were redeemed and sent out. But on Mother's Day, almost every single card was sent out. And if that is true, why is that? Why do we as men place such significance on the way that our fathers treat us, and in that relationship? I went to visit somebody who is in jail this week, to talk to them, to I guess build a friendship with them, and I don't know, I help them if I can, just be their friend, right? And we got to talking about fathers and the role my father played in my life and the role his father played in his life, and the role that he plays in his kids' lives. And I just relayed to him, hey, I've been here before on this side of the glass, and I can tell you from experience that there's nothing more in the world that I wanted than a relationship with my father. And I know that from the look on this person's face that was, that shook them, right? That shook them to their core. They understood the magnitude of that, and the gravity of that. And I wasn't saying that in a demeaning way or to put them down. I just wanted them to understand their worth as a father and the worth that we have as fathers, despite what society says. There's an epidemic in America with men not being in their homes, and I understand that sometimes it is that I understand that can be made difficult by the mothers. But let's be real, a lot of times the reason it's difficult is because as men we haven't accepted the responsibility we've been given. So this is an extremely important relationship. And there's 3 types of parenting. The first type of parenting is absent parenting, and we've all seen examples of this in our lives. The parents who never do anything with their kids. They don't take any active interest in their kids. You wonder why did they even have children? And some of the extremes of this, are parents that not responsible parents who understand that maybe things happen in life and they get pregnant at a young age, so they want what's best for the child, and they know that that's not for the child to be raised by them at that time. But parents who are irresponsible in that duty, and however there's many ways that looks like, and I'm sure we can all think of that. I'll just say that. So there's more than just being physically absent, but also emotionally and socially absent from your children's lives as well. What are you sharing and what aren't you sharing with your kids? What side do they see of you? What side don't they see of you? As a man, do your kids see your emotion, and not just your negative emotion, like when you're upset or angry or frustrated, but do they see the other side, when you're sad and something hurts, or you're happy and joyful? I think there's a lot of factors that play into that. Obviously, what you've dealt with in your life, any unresolved issues of your own heart that you haven't dealt with. And guys, this is why this is so important, right? Like, I talk about this all the time, how these things that happened to you in your childhood that you've never gone back and closed the door on and dealt with, that you've carried around uh, forever, um, they're affecting your relationship with your kids. That short temper, that outburst, the lack of patience, the lack of interest, maybe there's annoyance there, right? There's a root to all those things. And my experience has been 9 times out of 10, it goes back to something that happened with you, between your father or your mother, that you haven't resolved, right? So I just want to encourage you, and I want you to understand, like, why I harp on this, why it's so important to me. Because I think you care. I think you care about your kids. I think you love your kids. I think you want to be the best man that you can be. You want to be the best father you can be. You want to be the best husband you can be. But we just haven't been taught this stuff, guys. And I know it's not easy, right? It's not easy to do. It's way easier said than done. But the rewards are so great. And if we care about our kids, if we care about our wives, are we willing to make that sacrifice so that they live more fulfilling lives? So that we live more fulfilling lives? So that our grandkids, our great-grandkids live more fulfilling lives? Right? This isn't just about you in the moment. This is about, for some of you, this is about changing your family tree, your family lineage. And those grandkids and those great-grandkids are going to tell stories about you and how great of a father, great of a grandfather, great-grandfather you were, and how you changed the course of the family. How you stood up and you were a responsible man. You were an honorable man. You were a man of character and integrity. It carries weight, brothers. It carries significance. So the next kind of parenting is engaged parenting. And that's pretty straightforward, right? You're active in your kids' lives. My daughter, this week she had a thing at school called Art Walk, where, the last, I lose track of time, the last, I don't know, month or two, however long they've been in school now again, they made 3 different art projects based on 3 themes. The whole school does this, and then they display it. So we went there and we checked out our art, and she was excited to show us and show that stuff off. And we used to do the same thing with our son. So that's a easy example of engaged parenting, making sure your kids are doing their homework or their chores, or my daughter's playing piano now, so staying on top of her about practicing her piano, in talking to her about her day at school, right? But then there's another level, and this is the level that we're called to play at as men, and that's strategic parenting, right? And that entails equipping them with the most important ways of life, right? We're not just thinking about the here and the now. We're thinking about what is coming ahead and how we want to best prepare them for that, for when they leave the house permanently. What do we want them to take with them, right? Start with the end in mind. And part of strategic parenting is anticipating what they're going to need for each phase of their life, right? As toddlers, as adolescents, as teenagers, as young adults, and then heading into marriage. And how can we prepare them for that? What things can we teach them that will best equip them for each of these stages? I'll give you a quick example. When my son, right away when me and my son's mom were married, me and Jody, uh, I noticed that Anthony had a huge appetite. I mean, this dude, he could eat a whole pizza by himself. He would eat a whole foot-long sub from Subway. I'm like, how does all this food fit inside such a little dude? Like, this doesn't seem possible. And we'd go to Subway, and he'd get the same thing: ham and cheese sub on white, toasted, right, with nothing on it. Um, but he would never order it for himself. It was either his grandma ordering it for him if we were with them, or it would be his mom ordering it. It was never him. And he would stand there, and he was a little shy, right? Like, he was a little unsure of himself. And I don't know why, I just picked up on that, right? It was very apparent to me. And so we were out one day, and we were getting Subway, and that just spoke to me. And so I told I ordered the food for myself, and then for Jody, and then for him, and he's looking at me waiting for me to order his food for him. And I said, all right, tell the lady what you want. And he, right, like, looks down at his feet, looks up at me, like, kind of like, are you sure? Looks down at his feet, looks back up at me, and I'm like, tell her what you want, speak up, you can handle this. And he kind of whispers what he wants, and the lady kind of leans over the counter and is looking down at him. And I'm like, you got to be louder, son, like, speak up, let her know what you want, it's okay, uh, tell her. And he see him look down, and then kind of take a little bit of a deep breath, and stick his chest out a little bit, and and speak up, and told the lady what he wanted. And it was like a turning point for him. The lady made a sandwich, and he told her thank you and used his manners, and he was walking a little taller that day, right? Because that was a moment that instilled confidence in him, in who he was as a young boy, in what power he actually possessed. And that's important for all children. And there's been other areas of his life that me and his mom have had to be strategic. I keep saying his mom. Me and Jody have had to be strategic about, as he's navigated each phases of these lives. Even to now, talking to him, and for the last probably year and a half, being more, not strategic, I mean, that's the word, but it's kind of a different word, like being intentional about what I'm teaching him, right? Things that he needs to know as he becomes an adult. How do you change the oil on a car? What does that look like? How do you read your gauges? Things like that seem easy to me in second nature, because I've been doing them for so long, and just stopping and thinking, like, okay, like, this is an opportunity to make sure my son knows how to do this. How do you cook some basic meals, eggs, I make Korean beef, he loves that, like, all these things, we're anticipating him one day moving out of the house, and what do I want his life to look like? I want him to be able to function as an adult, be a productive member of society, but be able to do these, basic is the wrong word, but have this skill set, have these things that he can take with him into adulthood, so he can be reliable, and one day be able to help take care of someone else as well, should he go that direction. Yeah. So, B, Dad is destiny. Once again, just to reiterate, Dad is and always will be a powerful figure in a son's life. Uh, the power that we have as fathers cannot be understated. Um, I don't know what the stats are. I don't even know if there are stats, but the hundreds of men that I've been around through mentoring, through the privilege of staffing on men's events, the number one wound that men have is the father wound. Something dad said to you when you were younger, something dad did or didn't do, uh, you know, more than any of the other wounds, more than mother wounds, more than all alone wounds, more than heart wounds, uh, the father wound. And I mean, that was it for me, right? Like, my dad not being there, this huge wound of abandonment and rejection, and all the things that come along with those two things. And the Bible speaks about this, right? It says in Proverbs 17:6, the glory of sons is their fathers. And there's no truer statement. I mean, you can't argue with that. Every boy wants to be like their dad. Every young boy, their hero is their father. That's an awesome, awesome responsibility. So, number 2, the 3 ingredients of strategic fatherhood. So, Dr. Robert Lewis, he relates this to volleyball, right? And the 3 components of volleyball. There's the dig, the set, and the spike. So the dig, in volleyball is the person who is digging down and basically passing the volleyball, if you will, to the person who's going to set it up finally for the person who's going to spike it. And in the dig, this phase is all about dad's compelling character. And there's an emphasis on remembering that every son wants to be like their dad. So if you have that in mind, as you are raising your young son, what are you demonstrating for him? What are you modeling for him? Is he seeing you in your worst moments? Is he seeing you only in your best moments? What seeds do you want to be sown in him? There's this list. Oh man, I wish I had it. Something like 30 things every father should teach a son, and it's like, open the door for a woman, pull out the chair, offer your jacket, all these things that used to be commonplace, with a lot of them that are somewhat looked down on today, or don't carry the same honor. But what things do you want your son to know about being a man? What characteristics do you want him to have? Do you want him to believe that his word is his bond? That if he says something, he follows through and he does it no matter what the cost is to him because he said that? You know. Do you want him to understand that he needs to one day be responsible for taking care of himself and what that looks like? Sorry, my brain is kind of fried from the thing earlier. But what are these characteristics that you want your son to have? Whatever they are, I'll tell you this. You have to model them first. If you aren't modeling those, there's a chance that your son is not going to pick up on those things. You may get lucky, and it may be a situation like me where I just, not intuitively, but I somehow figured out that I didn't want to be like my father, so I just had to do the opposite of what he was doing. Um, and that's how I developed some of my character. But I think that that's rare, far and few in between. So the next phase of this strategic fatherhood plan is the set, right? And this is Dad's clear instructions. And this is where we need to think about is what essential information do I want my son to leave home with? So back to what we've been working on the last year is just life skills, right? I had him open up a bank account, a checking, a savings. How do you transfer money from one to the other? How do you write a check, which no one really does anymore, hardly. Life skills around a car, life skills around hygiene. We're obviously my son's mixed. He's got different hair than what I have, and different hair than he's got nappy hair, right? So it needs to be cut a certain way. So taking him to and showing him and exposing him to a barber who knows how to do that, right? It was a big deal for my son. It was a big deal for me. I didn't get that till I was like 17 when one of my good friends, Antoine, took me for my first fade. Crazy as it seems. Those type of things. Teaching him how to cook, teaching him how to do laundry, teaching him how to clean different areas of the home, teaching him how to mow the grass, weed whack. All these life skills, all these things that he needs to know, and being patient with him. When he makes mistakes, it's like what I told him today. I'm like, hey, I've been there before, okay? Like, sometimes it's hard to learn things in life if you don't make a few mistakes. So the point of it is not to make the same mistake twice, right? That's what you want to avoid. So you need to think about that, right? What do you want your own son to learn? When he leaves home at whatever age that is, what is he going to carry away from him? Right? When he is faced with a situation for him to compromise his values, what is he going to think about? My grandpa did a great job of this on both the life skills and the character side. Because he used to tell me all the time before I left the house, are you a leader or you're a follower? And I would get so annoyed by that because I had heard that for like the millionth time. And I would know what he wanted to hear, so I just placate him and say, I'm a leader. And he'd sit up in his recliner and say, okay, great. Don't tell me, show me. And anytime for the most part, when I was faced in a situation to compromise my values or do something that was questionable, here his voice would ring out in my head. Are you a leader or a follower? Show me, don't tell me. And that was one of the fundamental principles of my life. Still is. And then finally is the spike. And, this is where we really set our sons up for success. And this is where, as dads, we need to come up with creative ceremonies around these times in our sons' lives where we can help usher them into the next area of our life. And I've talked about this a lot too. In Western society, we're the only culture that, outside of Judaism, that doesn't have a rite of passage for our boys, for our young men. So if you go in a room and you ask, a group of men, when did you become a man? You're going to get a bunch of different answers. When I smoked my first cigarette, when I could pay my own bills, when I turned 18, when I slept with a woman for the first time. all these different things. There's no conclusive time in a man's life where he says, okay, I'm now a man, right? These these are the characteristics that have determined that I am a man, right? And there's a way as dads that we can do that for our sons. I'm going to talk about that next week and what that looks like, and share with you what I did with my son and what I'm doing and preparing as he moves into the next phase of his life as well. So that's it tonight for Man Up Friday. Appreciate you hanging in here. It's late. So we will see you tomorrow for the Saturday shout out. I love you. If you need anything, hit me up. Otherwise, have a good night, and we will talk again soon enough. Peace.